This wasn't going to be the first video of my channel in earnest, but this idea really got its teeth into me, so here goes. Today we're going to talk about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and how, for better or for worse, it relies on its community to make it fun. We aren't going to get into, is it a good game, is it a bad game? There's plenty of takes on the internet about that. That's not really what I'm trying to do here. What I am here to talk about today is how Pokemon relies on its community to bring in new members more than the game itself, and the science behind how that works. If you're new to Pokemon, as I was, Pokemon Scarlet/Violet presents many problems that seem impossible to solve at first pass. It does a minimal tutorial but does not push the concept of the school, which is where you really learn the ropes as effectively as it could, and presents you with several branching paths to take in terms of story. If you are someone who tends to use the story as a guide, you are going to spend a lot of time fumbling if you choose to go it alone. And if you are someone who likes to just explore, you will have to learn by trial and error and flinging yourself at enemies who will often outclass you. However, playing with someone else, even virtually, brings the wealth of cultural knowledge of Pokemon among its community into play, and that can truly be a game changer. So why does this approach work so well? To start, I need to define a branch of psychology known as community psychology. Community psychology, according to this dude named Jamie, concerns the relationships of individuals with communities and society. This may sound like a definition of psychology itself to the outsider, but it's a very specific branch of social psychology that focuses on specific questions around how we create and sustain communities. Grubin, Jamie, isn't the first guy to take a crack at why we form groups and how. Theories about how we create a sense of community date back to research emerging in the early 1970s. In psychology, we refer to these older base articles as seminal. Seminal sources are defined as sources that made a large impact within a particular discipline and continue to be referenced in current research. One of the big seminal sources for community psychology is a book entitled Psychological Sense of Community, Prospects for Community Psychology by Seymour B. Saracen. Suddenly Seymour. Saracen lays out 4 factors that can be used to measure how we build communities, and we are going to go through those today in the context of Pokemon. The first factor is membership, which is quite literally who is inside the community. Pokemon has a rich history and a current presence that means there's always someone who has a knowledge of and beyond the game. Debuting in Japan in 1996, Pokemon as a monolith hit a peak of popularity in the US around 2000. Pokemon is possibly one of the most pervasive and definitely one of the most popular video game series in Nintendo's history, second only to Super Mario Bros. Thus, in 2022, we have entire populations who've grown up with various Pokemon games, movies, shows, and merch. Even if you didn't grow up with Pokemon, and there are whole populations that did not for reasons I'm not going to get into, but you see them right here on the screen, you've probably had some exposure to minimally this little cutie, Pikachu. The second factor is influence, defined as the individual's sense of being able to influence the practices of the community. Since we have folks who've grown up alongside Ash and Pikachu, there are folks with deep knowledge of Pokemon typology, stats for how often shinies appear, catch rates, and more. These folks are wise sages in the Pokemon community, able to share their knowledge obtained through game playthrough and even data mining with the noobs. They have a tremendous amount of influence and in many ways can be way more informative than the game itself. The third factor is integration and fulfillment of needs, feeling of shared values, exchanged resources, and needs met within the community. Built into every single game, you have the ability to trade Pokemon. This has evolved over the years, but the core mechanics remain the same. Individual players can swap certain Pokemon for others in order to build their dream team, as it were. In Scarlet and Violet, players can also join Terra Raid events in order to obtain specific special Pokemon. This mechanic allows lower-ranked players to join higher-ranked players as well, and thus see chances to defeat and catch Pokemon they would not have had access to on their own. Finally, there's shared emotional connection, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's involvement in rituals, ceremonies, and celebrations, as well as just scenarios that bring a strong emotional attachment with them as part of the wider group. All of the things I mentioned just now in the fulfillment of needs portion of this are also utilized by the Pokemon community to create a strong shared emotional connection. Folks can help one another and benefit from one another's knowledge in ways very specific to the trading and raiding mechanics, and by doing so create a shared emotional connection in the context of games. Outside of the context of games, the vast sea of other Pokemon media leads to get more shared emotional connections. The recent announcement of the end of Ash Ketchum's 25-year run in the TV show led to an outpouring of nostalgic love from fans who grew up alongside Ash. The strong sense of community built around Pokemon games and media can be frustrating, and it can also be beautiful. If you're trying to go it alone as a noob, it's easy to get discouraged and overwhelmed by the amount of cultural knowledge that you have to absorb very quickly. If you're playing these games with others, then you're experiencing some endorphins and some highs and lows that are all about the people that you hang out with and the people that you keep company with, but impact how you view the gameplay as well. I'm not sure how this would play out for me had I gone it entirely alone, but what I can say is that I played about 10 hours of Sword during some of the most isolated moments of the pandemic, and I didn't ever really get into it. For better or for worse, Pokemon is an adventure meant to be shared. And in that way, no matter the other problems with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and trust me, there are many, and they are often hilarious, it captures the spirit of what Pokemon does and how they've established such a sense of community among their fans. And at the end of the day, they've done a pretty good job of it. If any of you found our electrifying battle to be shocking, go smash that subscribe button, smash that like button, click up here.